out there in Facebook land and even the real world, IRL, to just show how in touch with the modern age I am.
You know what I
It's Curt and
discovered
the other
today?
guy, Brent.
Hey, you know what I
What did you
discovered today?
discover?
When you said Facebook world, my thing popped up that I joined Facebook 18 years ago today. It was still in the first year that Facebook was
18 years
around.
ago.
Yeah, 18 years ago, it
So it
popped
would
up
have
on my
been
thing.
2007.
2007, yeah. It started, yeah, it went
2007, huh?
public
I
in
don't.
September of 2006. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of cool
Okay.
when I
I
saw that.
I'm not sure when I think around 2010 maybe. I was working with some college age people in a ministry, and I think I might have. And then I started getting more active in around 2000, probably 14, 15. Ran for
Yeah.
office in 16, and I've just kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
stayed on there. I mean, I do put personal stuff on there. I don't just put, you know,
Yeah.
societal issues, political issues, that
So
kind of
anyway,
thing. But
yeah, that makes me feel
we
old.
have
Like
got.
Facebook, 18 years? Like, wow. Yeah.
I know. Did you ever have a MySpace
No, I did not.
account?
No,
Me
I
neither.
missed
I
that
never
one.
had
Yeah,
MySpace.
I missed that
So,
one.
um,
Anyway,
so
go
I
ahead.
just
I
wanted to
interrupted
tell
you there when
everybody.
you were
No,
introducing
you're
us.
good. It's
Yeah.
all good. I wanted to tell everybody some of the things we want to plan to talk about tonight. The first thing, I just want to give a real quick shameless plug. We do have a Spotify channel. It's just Curt and the other guy. We have a couple of previous podcasts posted there. It would be wonderful if you would go listen to those, like, follow, share our podcast episodes if you'd like. Also, on these, feel free to comment. You can also go back and comment on Spotify. So that would really help. Some of the things we kind of want to talk about tonight, and we'll just see how many of them we get to. We're going to go to around 9 o'clock Eastern time. So about 45 minutes. But Brent just got back from a really cool vacation, kind of in Central and Eastern Europe. Would that be a pretty good description?
Poland, just Poland. Yep.
Just
Yeah.
Poland. Okay.
Spent about 2 weeks in Poland,
And I
and
wanted to tell us a little bit about that, and just a little bit about the fact that he used to live in Russia as well. Just kind of bring that back in. One of the first things I do want to talk about this, the news is just full of stuff right now. So I want to talk about President Trump's about face on allowing illegals to stay in the country who are otherwise not committing any crimes. It seems like it flies in the face of MAGA and what they stand for. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. If we have some time, we might talk about protesting versus criminal activity. I have someone I know very well, firsthand view of protests in New Albany, Indiana, where I live. So we can talk about that. If we get some time, we might talk about the crazy stuff going on in the Middle East. And our ultimate goal eventually is to come back to the Declaration of Independence and just kind of go through it. Not necessarily, we won't just sit here and read it, but we'll talk about what some of the concepts are in that. So those are a few of the things we want to talk about tonight. Feel free to jump on here, put in a comment, question, and we'll be happy to address it as well. So, Brent, why don't you tell us a little bit remind us about your life in Russia, what you were there for, kind of how long you were there and when you left. And then tell us just a little bit about this vacation you had in Poland. Just, I think it's kind of cool that you went over there. So,
yeah, I lived in Moscow, Russia from 1992 to 2007. I was a missionary over there, and definitely was plugged in to Russian life and culture and the church and everything there. So that was really a good chapter of my life.
okay.
And I have a missionary friend who lives in Poland. He's been there for 4 years, and so we stay in touch. And um, Poland is Eastern Europe, so
Mm-hmm.
actually when I was there, I couldn't believe how much was similar to Russia in the positive sense. You know, just you see the even just the architecture, the way the cities are laid out. Of course, there was a lot of Russian Soviet influence for many years there, so you can still sense that. The food, I love the food. I did not have one bad meal the whole time I was
Well,
there.
that's nice when you're on vacation.
It was nice,
What
and
are those potato
according
cakes they
yeah,
make?
potato cakes, yeah, they're one of the
Don't they
things.
have a special name?
A
Like
what
they
now?
pierogi? Is that in
Yeah,
Poland or is that in the country?
yeah,
Pierogi.
pierogies, yeah,
Okay.
pierogies,
Yeah.
ate those 2 or 3 times,
I've had them
and,
before in the United States, never in
yeah,
Poland. So.
well, they're pretty good there too. So, anyway, yeah, it was good, it was good. I think, one of the aspects as since I'm a history teacher, just there's a lot of history there associated with World War II and the Nazi occupation.
Yeah,
So getting to go to Auschwitz and Birkenau and go through those tours and um, yeah, you see the movies about all that stuff, but to actually be on location and see the what's left and hear all the details talked about,
yeah.
it does make an impression. It really leaves an impression.
So, question about Auschwitz. Um,
Mhm.
it's outside of Germany. It's in Poland,
It's in Poland,
right?
yes,
Right.
yes,
And I think it is significant. It was one of the early concentration camps, maybe the
yes.
first one. I'm not positive. Was it the first one?
I don't remember if it
Uh,
was the first, but
I,
it was definitely
I know it was,
amongst the first. Yeah.
and I think it's important to note that the Germans, even under Adolf Hitler, didn't want to start concentration camps in their own nation. They wanted to send these what they called them undesirables and criminals and labeled them right because of ethnicity and other reasons. Jews were primary target, but there were other groups that were targeted: gypsies, homosexuals. Lots of different groups
Oh
were
yeah.
targeted. But
Mhm.
it's interesting that they shipped them out of their own country to do this.
Yeah. What they told us in the tour there was that they didn't at first they didn't want the German people to really know what was going on.
Right.
So that was a lot of it. And so even where Auschwitz is located, it's a pretty rural area of southern Poland. So it was easy to get to from Germany, but yet remote enough that you're not going to raise too many red flags
Yeah.
with what's happening there. So,
And the reason I bring that up, you know, whether you like President Trump or not, one thing you have to say, there's never a dull moment. There's always something going on. Um, the news is it's almost like a machine gun.
yeah,
There's just executive orders and statements and changing ideas and whatnot. But like, it almost seems like we've completely forgotten about the actual threat of sending U.S. citizens to other countries' prisons. That was actually threatened. And the president actually said he was going to have Attorney General Pam Bondi look
yeah,
into the legality of
yeah,
that.
yeah. It's definitely been foreshadowed back in Nazi Germany doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, I bet it was pretty
And
secret,
I want to be
but
super.
yeah,
Mhm. And I want to be super duper clear. I am not comparing President Trump to Adolf Hitler. I think I think it's ridiculous. Okay. I don't like a lot of his policies, but if you follow what I post on Facebook and if you're a friend of mine, you know that I really haven't liked policies of any presidents probably in my lifetime. Bits and pieces here and there, right? But the military industrial complex, the corporate welfare state, the authoritarianism, the foreign interventionism, the continued debt, that's administration after administration. And those are the issues that are most important to me because they literally limit human freedom. So this is not like pick on President Trump. It's just that in comparison to President Biden or even President Obama, there's just not as much stuff happening. Like he does so much stuff, he's constantly in the news. I get pushback sometimes. People, well, what about auto pin Joe Biden, and what about Sleepy Joe, and what about he wasn't qualified? Well, all of that's bad, in my opinion. But it's also in the past, and now we're just like moving at warp speed from one thing to the
yeah.
next. Do you feel that way, Brent?
It definitely is a machine gun, like you said, of stuff
Yeah,
happening, and yeah, things. It's just changing back forth, back up,
Yeah.
down, around. I mean, it just feels like we're jerked around a little bit with everything
Yeah.
going on. And it's like last week's news feels like it was a year ago. I mean,
Oh,
it's
it's
like so
crazy.
much new stuff that's happening. So yeah. Well,
It's
anyway,
crazy.
yeah, I had a good
Well,
vacation and back
good.
in America, and let's yeah, back into real life
So
here.
I think this is still true. Trivia question. I didn't
Sure.
Google it, haven't double checked, but I believe Warsaw has
Yes.
it's the largest Polish population city in the world. That would stand to reason. Warsaw, Poland would be number
Yes.
one.
And
If
yeah,
I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
Chicago, Illinois is number two. Is that
so
correct?
that is correct. I have heard that. Yes. Yeah.
And I've heard it all my life. I've never like double checked it, but I know there's
Yeah.
a. I do know.
Yeah.
Well, you live in Illinois. I do know when I lived there, Kazimierz Pulaski Day became a holiday. Is it still a holiday in
No,
Illinois, Kazimierz
no,
Pulaski Day?
no. Somewhere along the way,
Okay.
it fell down. Maybe in Chicago area it is, but
Okay.
yeah, it was interesting because even on the plane over, I was sitting next to a young guy who was a Polish American, grew up in a Polish family, where he speaks Polish and everything, but grew up in
Hmm.
America, going over to visit his grandma. And then on the way back, my daughter, who college age, went with me. She was sitting next to a guy who was probably college age, that also same
Okay.
situation, lives in Chicago and a Polish family. And um, yeah, because I mean, we flew out of Chicago, so yeah, so it was, we were both
Yeah.
sitting next to people who were Polish heading over there.
Well, it's interesting. I want to compare this to another. I hadn't even written this down, but we have a holiday coming up Thursday that some people struggle with, and I wanted to just kind of illustrate Pulaski Day and compare it with Juneteenth for just a second. Okay. And Pulaski Day it was in March. I don't remember the date now. I just remember it became a holiday for quite a while in Illinois. And there's actually a town not too far from where we grew up called Mount Pulaski. Um, so it's not like Pulaski was just, oh, he's just made up guy. He was literally a Polish colonel who came and helped train the U.S. Revolutionary forces so that they could eventually win their independence from the most powerful nation in the world, Great Britain. So it's not like it wasn't just done solely because there's a large Polish population in Chicago. Sure, that had impact on it. They have
So,
uh, influence, but he was a legitimate hero of revolutionary America. And I think here's one: Juneteenth. I'm gonna be honest with you. Up until probably 2020, I'd never heard of Juneteenth.
I
I'm not.
neither.
I'm not gonna lie. And at first, I'm like, "What is this?" And I started looking into the history of Juneteenth, and I'm like, "Gosh, this is something we should celebrate. This is fantastic. This is the day that the last group of slaves, the way I understand it, in Texas, learned that they were free. Now, why wouldn't we celebrate that day? That's a great day in American history, right?
I agree. I agree. It's the thing is, it's all politicized as, this is left or right, and it's like,
Hmm.
what about human? It's not about left or right. It's about being human.
Exactly.
And if Abraham Lincoln was correct in his theology and said that this whole Civil War was a punishment from God for over 200 years of enslaving people, I'm not sure that I would theologically agree with that totally,
Sure.
but definitely there is a lot to celebrate in the fact that we was able to not only end the war but end slavery and create a new kind of America. I mean, that was a rough time we went through,
Yes.
and so I don't see anything wrong with celebrating that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things where people you mentioned already, they take an either or position, right? It's either Juneteenth or July 4th. No, let's have both.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate both. If I'm not mistaken, Frederick Douglass, in one of his speeches, talked about the importance of the Declaration of Independence and the 4th of July. I think he gave it on the 4th of July. So if Frederick Douglass, one of the leading advocates for anti-slavery, equal rights, for Black Americans, if he could celebrate July 4th, certainly I can celebrate Juneteenth.
Well, I think it's like if I were to compare it to um, our country was born on in 1776, July 4th, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, but we went through an awful adolescence. The early 1800s was just rough. We
Yeah,
could not get along. We were trying to figure out who we were, our identity, and everything. And so maybe, I mean, maybe post Civil War, this is like, getting to our sweet 16, or maybe we've hit 18 or 21, one of those like
yeah,
birthdays.
growing
Okay,
up a little bit.
we're kind of growing up now, and to
Yeah,
be able to acknowledge that is okay. I mean, neither holiday has to be politicized. It's not about left or right. It's part of our history, and we can call it what it is and celebrate the fact that we grew up a little bit.
yeah, I agree. And I think, and this wasn't like in our agenda, but I do think it's worth bringing up. Um, I do think we have to put all of it into perspective. When we look at it, you and I today, we look at slavery and we see evil. And I think it was evil. I think it's evil. I think to kidnap someone, take them from their home, force them to work in a place they don't want to live, separate families, take away their rights as human beings, that's evil. Okay. So I don't want to sound like I'm minimizing slavery. Okay. But I do want to put it into perspective. Great Britain is the nation that introduced slavery to the colonies. Okay. France had slaves at the time, black slaves. I think Spain and Portugal did as well. But it isn't just the Europeans who've enslaved the Africans. Slavery it is a it is a stain on all of human history. Would I be correct to say that?
I would say
There's been
probably, yeah,
slavery throughout all of
every culture has probably had to deal with that to some extent or the other over time.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And so it doesn't in any way, shape, or form excuse our nation and our leaders. But we just have to understand that there's almost every culture in the world is guilty of it. If they
yeah,
got to if they were able to rise to any level of power, they probably enslaved or colonized, other
somebody
nations.
else the somebody else paid the price for another civilization's advancement.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt, right? We know that. We know that story. The Romans and Greeks had slaves. I mean, Genghis Khan had slaves, and
Yeah.
it's just it's. And I think what it boils down to, you and I, we've talked a little bit about spirituality. We both grew up in a very the same church up until about ninth or 10th grade, but very similar type Christian background. And I do think slavery is a result of a selfish, sinful human nature. It's an evil thing that one human perpetrates upon another. So it's not excusable, just like racism would be an evil idea. It's a form of hatred, and God's against that. He wants us to love one another. So, um, do you have anything else you want to kind of say about that right now? I know we didn't even say we were going to talk about that,
Yeah.
but
It's fine. We
we
can
might
move
as
on.
well, right?
Yeah, we can move on.
Um, so so the first big piece of news I wanted to talk about, and this may take us the rest of the time period because I just I scratched my head when I saw this. So I think it was Thursday evening. I was driving home from work, and most of the time I'll listen to a podcast or listen to music or something. But for whatever reason, I turned on the 5 o'clock local NPR station out of Louisville just to hear the headlines, and I was listening to the headlines on I think it's WFPL, but and I heard them say that Donald Trump said, "Well, we're going to take a look at allowing illegals who work in the farm industry, agriculture, hospitality, so hotels, motels, and restaurants, and construction. We're going to take a look at allowing, and I want to repeat this because it's pretty, it's a pretty big about face, illegals, and allowing them to stay as long as they haven't committed any other crimes while they've been here, as long as they've been law abiding citizens. So the one crime they've committed was crossing the US Mexican border without US government permission. Okay. Now, I do want to say, I want to set this up a little bit. I'm not a total borderless society kind of person. I don't think borders are insignificant. I think they do matter. I just have a very different view on who should be allowed in. I think basically anybody who wants to come here and take care of himself and his or her family, abide by the laws of this nation, as long as they're not bringing in some sort of disease that will like wipe out the nation, and they're not taking resources from the taxpayer, as long as they're productive members of society, I personally don't have a problem with them coming here and staying. And it seems to me that is basically what Donald Trump said, but only in those four areas. And it's not just that's just those four areas, but you're picking and choosing winners in the business world. You're picking and choosing winners who gets to stay. And it's just totally a 180-degree turnaround from the rhetoric of the last 10 or more years from him, his party, and his supporters. And I like, there have been times when I've brought things up that I thought Donald Trump had flip flopped on, and his supporters always find a way to explain it. I've yet to hear an explanation on this one, how this is okay. And I've got to think that the MAGA base has to be upset about that unless they never believed any of what they were saying in the first place. I talked a lot there. I'll let you talk for a little bit.
Yeah. Um, and of course, it's really hard to know what really is going on because most of our news and social media gives us our algorithms, and you go to look at the other side. But anyway, I do feel like there's enough proof that, well, here's the deal. When the MAGA crowd was talking about what we're going to do about getting rid of the people that are here that are dangerous, the criminals, the
Mm-hmm.
rapists,
Yeah,
the thieves, the drug
yeah,
dealers. I don't see those stories in the news. What I see is, they're going up to Home Depot parking lots and looking for people who fit the outer description of an illegal,
mm-hmm.
like say the construction worker or going to the fields or wherever, but and grabbing people without checking. They don't, like, if we knew, which they said they did, we know who all these criminals are, then why aren't they getting rounded up? I'm all for getting rid of the criminals,
Absolutely.
but I don't see that in the news from either side that that's happening. Of course, we've got the what's his name that's just got brought back from El Salvador. His
Oh,
name is
Abrego,
escaping me.
is that
Yeah,
his name?
yeah. And now they're all of a sudden saying he's a human trafficker or something. It's like, okay, that wasn't brought up until just now. And so, I mean, if they have files on these people, if they have
Yeah.
police records on these people, take them out, you know, you know. Anyway, I'm just saying, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I kind of said
Yeah,
what I
the
was saying.
Abrego
I think
situation is a little bit difficult. I
because,
think we were talking over each other there for a second.
yeah, it's skipping a little bit
Go
there.
ahead,
Go
Brent.
ahead. No, I was just saying that,
Well, I
yeah,
think
I
the
think
Abrego situation.
you know, you go.
We got to get on sync here. You go and I'll be quiet.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. With that situation, yeah, there's a lot of uh, a lot of cloudy stuff to it. But in general, the people that are getting rounded up are not necessarily the criminals and everything. And I agree with you that, I think we have a place in our culture to try to, you know, if we're going to focus on deporting people, let's start with the people who we don't want here and not the ones we
Yeah.
do want here. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I honestly have not delved into the Abrego situation too much. I've heard a lot of stuff from both sides, enough that I don't really know the situation clearly. But I will say this. I try not to get hung up on one situation. I try to focus more on the general principle. Um, and I'm glad people, if he's, I don't know if he's innocent or not a criminal. I'm glad there's people advocating for him. If he is a criminal, as you said, I don't want him here. And I think this is another thing that I consistently talk about with people. What exactly is a crime? And to me, I look at crime very, very simply. To me, there's about four things that are criminal. Okay. Murder, rape, assault, and thievery.
Mhm.
And you can just about classify every form of actual crime into one of those four categories. It's
Yeah.
a violation of your individual sovereignty, the idea that you own yourself. Now, this is apart from a relationship with God in heaven. This is on a human level.
Sure.
You own you, I own me. I don't
Well,
have, go ahead.
also crossing the border illegally is a civil
Yes.
situation, not a criminal one.
Yes. So you're not
And
criminally illegal.
yes, you've just it's a civil case. And so
Yes.
before when people say that, well, they lose their due process because they committed a crime crossing the border, it's like, well, no, they crossed um uh a civil situation, so it's a little different of a situation. They
It
should have
is.
process. So it's not hurting somebody else by them crossing over.
Right. Right. Um, and I think I see people use illustrations like, well, would you let someone break into your home? Or I saw this one the other day. What if someone sneaked into Costco without a membership card and went around and was trying to take things while they were at Costco? And I thought to myself, well, if they did and they tried to buy something or leave with something without a membership, Costco wouldn't throw them in prison. The manager at Costco would say, "Would you like to get a membership? Come over here to the desk. Let's sign you up. Let's have you pay the membership fee, and now you can shop here." Like,
I
yeah, you
Yeah.
sneaked in, but
Yeah, I was at Costco, and now you have to, when you check out, they scan your card, and there
yeah,
were people in front of me that didn't have a card, and they made them leave the store without their stuff.
did they?
They
They
did.
they
They
didn't
made them
let them
leave the
sign
store.
up.
I mean, maybe they could have, but they were
Yeah.
told that nope, you can't buy the stuff without the card.
Okay.
I was really surprised to see that. They had a little
So,
basket full
but
of things, but
so you just shot my illustration down. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. But
no,
to the point,
no. But
but to,
yeah, go
Costco
get a
is a
membership.
private
Yeah.
institution, right? And we're not talking about someone invading my home or invading my business. We're talking about crossing a line between two
Mhm.
countries. It's just not the same thing. Now, again, I don't want my friends to mistake this. Neither one of us, I think I can speak for you, neither one of us just think willy nilly we want a completely open border. What we're saying is let's make it much easier to come in legally so we do know who's here. And again, hey, they need to support themselves. That's cool. That's the right thing. But so should Americans be supporting themselves. I mean,
Yeah, you talk about going over to the Costco desk and buying your membership,
mhm.
and I did see a statistic that said that the immigration courts are over 30,000 cases backlogged. 30,000. And so, like, I have friends who like are here as refugees, and they've been here going on 3 years, and their court date is scheduled for April, I think, of 26.
Okay,
So it'll be over 4 years. That's their first one. Okay.
right.
And that doesn't guarantee anything. It's just that, like, I mean, they have hired a lawyer,
Hmm.
paid some big bucks to make sure that they've got everything, all their ducks in a row. They are here as political refugees. They didn't sneak into the country. They crossed over and showed their documents and were allowed in.
Hmm.
But but in a sense, they're still here pending, and
Yeah.
people are here pending for years and years and years, and it's easy to target them and say, well, they're here illegally because they don't have their green card, they don't have their citizenship. But I mean, it can take a dozen years to get that stuff. And
So let me ask you a question about those friends of yours, not specifically, but
yeah,
related. Do they get some sort of like temporary paperwork that recognizes their right to stay here and live here?
yeah, I think they have something that, yeah, when they entered the country, they got something that said that, yeah, we've let them in. They claim to be political refugees, but everything's pending. There's no guarantee that they can stay forever or that they will get citizenship, but they have been allowed in at least on a temporary basis. Um, but again, there's people that have been in the system even longer than them that have been, attacked by an ICE agent and rounded up and put handcuffs on them.
Hmm.
But they're in the middle of the process too. Yeah. And so, even people that come over illegally, once they're here, they can start a process and they get those same kind of documents that
Hmm.
say, they've applied. And, but again, when you got 30,000 cases backlogged, and they're underfunded. I mean, immigration and naturalization is not the department that gets a lot of the funding um, that they need, and they need more. They need more
Yeah.
of that because there are a lot of people here who are working and they've got families and they're doing a great job, and
Hmm.
we want them here. I mean, they contribute to our society, um, and I think that, Trump making that statement the other day, and yeah, I haven't heard any follow up really from that either. It was one of his many statements that just kind of, maybe it kind of got overshadowed by everything else happening this weekend. But, he's saying, well, we do need to have some of these people here. We need them in our hotels and our farms and it's like, well, yeah, yeah,
That's
we
what
do.
people have been saying.
We
If
do.
if you
Yeah.
actually um, if you actually were able to round up all the illegals and ship them out at one time, our
Oh,
economy would probably
we,
collapse.
we would totally collapse. Well, I think even like I read somewhere, and I don't know, I haven't seen it to prove it, but like in California, all the farm workers
Hmm.
that all of a sudden they all like hid, and nobody's picking that fruit. There's fruit dying and vegetables
What's that
that's
going to do to
not
our
getting
grocery
collected.
prices?
And so, yeah, I would think that, if we see the prices of those things going up, then that would
Yeah,
be part of it, probably, or a shortage of, or whatever. But yeah, like I say, I can't prove it. I just heard something about it that, there's
yeah.
stuff dying in the fields because nobody's there to pick it.
So this is now my innate distrust of government kicks in right here because I have been, since I was in high school, I have been a firm believer in the invisible hand, the free market, the free movement of goods and labor, and that kind of thing, that the market will determine where
Mhm.
people should live and what
Sure.
they should do, and you
Hmm.
know should they go to school, should like college, should they not. And we have so much government intervention in each single area. We've just grown accustomed to it. We just sort of allow it. And we could go down the proverbial rabbit hole here. You could talk about student loans and college costs. You could talk about um, regulations and burdens on businesses and business costs. Okay. But let's keep it with immigration for just a second. Again, I want to reiterate, I don't think either one of us are saying just free for all.
No,
But what we're saying is there's a reason these people are here working. There's a reason Americans aren't doing these jobs, right? And the market has brought these people here because it betters their lives and the lives of their families. And Americans then are doing other jobs and doing other things. And I hear people say things like this. Well, I guess Americans are just going to have to suck it up and start doing some of these jobs. Well, how about you go first? And even if they are, they're not going to do it overnight.
sure.
So
And they're going to want to be paid more, and
exactly,
it's going to raise everything. It's like,
exactly. The
you know,
same people who hate raising minimum wage want the government to tell us how many foreign workers should be here.
yeah,
You're not thinking.
yeah,
You're not
yeah,
thinking freedom here, right? You're not thinking free market. And I think to me, that's where I struggle sometimes when I get into conversations with people because they misread what I'm saying and they kind of back into their corner and they're defending themselves. And it's not that we're saying we just want everybody here. What we're saying is freedom works. It's the best system there is, the most freedom you can give to human beings that will provide the most good for the most people. Is it perfect? No, because it's a human system. But the less we have fallible human beings telling other fallible human beings what to do, the better off society's going to be. Because just because you're in government doesn't make you some kind of special moral creature. In fact, I think just the opposite seems to be true. It seems to bring out the worst in people. But I digress.
yeah. I think that there's even a kind of a survival of the fittest thing. I think
Hmm.
the people who are even coming here illegally, they're the people who are willing to take risk. They're
Yes.
willing to do whatever it takes. If you've gone through whatever they've gone through to leave their their even discomfort of their home, to say goodbye to people, to be willing to give up everything, to be able to start over with just a little bit of hope that they're going to better their lives and make their lives safer for them and their children or whoever. I mean, these are the people who have, if you think about evolutionary thing and you think about survival of the fittest, the strongest survive, we're getting the best of the best, probably. We're getting the people that are willing to put forth the effort to come and try to make their life. And it is not easy. And everybody who thinks they come here and the government gives them tons of hands out, they don't. They don't get handouts. Eventually, in the system, just like everybody else, they'll get some help, some aid, maybe some things helping with their kids, health, their medical things, maybe free lunches at school. They'll get these little things, but they're not. Nobody's giving them money every month to live on and giving them houses to live in and all that kind of stuff. That's just
Hmm.
the government is not doing that. Now, sounds like they did that for people from South Africa, but last month, but that's a whole nother story too. So I don't know. Um,
Yeah. That's another one of those I haven't really had the chance to delve into that
yeah, I
story.
haven't followed up on that, but supposedly they were being given all kinds of stuff. So, but
And it
anyway,
does seem that there does seem to be some pretty active violence toward some of the farmers, the white farmers. That boer, my understanding is the word boer is a term for farmer. Um, and I don't want to go down that path because I haven't really looked at, and South Africa has quite the past as well,
right,
right?
yeah,
But I have
yeah,
seen some clips where they were literally chanting "Death to farmers, death
yeah.
to the boers." So
But
again,
my point is that people
yes,
coming over here are not being, they're like, they're taking the money from the veterans and giving it to these illegal immigrants. Like,
They're
no,
not.
they're not. No,
No,
they're not.
no.
There's
I
nothing like that going on.
I actually have relatives, a couple relatives that work in the Illinois, like Department of Welfare, Human
Okay.
Services. They work.
Hmm.
They're like caseworkers,
Sure.
and in Illinois, you can't
Yeah.
even get free benefits. If you're an illegal, you cannot get benefits. Now, your children who are born here can.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Down
Okay.
the road, once you kind of get
Yes.
permits and green cards and stuff, then yeah, you're eligible just like everybody else
Yeah.
is. But
And I think
come
Illinois is
here.
probably
Yeah.
pretty close to sanctuary state.
Yes,
They're
definitely
going to report.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely there's more freedom here in Illinois than a lot of state for people coming in. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's why my friends who are political refugees came here because they said this is an easier state to be able to get, to get ahead and to get all the things that they would need down the road. So, yeah, I just, I hate to see people who have already been victimized and are struggling in their homelands victimized a second time around.
Hmm.
They've come here for safety and hope for a future. And yes, there are some criminals, there's some bad blood here. And we need to focus on those things. Okay. If we have such this great FBI and police and we can figure everything out, who the bad people are, supposedly, like they tell us that they know who they are. Well, okay, let's get them out of here,
Yeah.
and let's then work on creating a better system for the people who are here already, that are settled, that are working, their kids are here, they're in school. Why disrupt their lives and separate families when we can make it work? We
Right.
can make it work.
Right. And as you pointed out earlier, the court, the administrative court system is overwhelmed already. Uh,
Yeah.
and so this would alleviate some of that pressure as well. So,
Yeah.
um, so cool. I think honestly, that's about all we have time for today. Because I don't want to like overdo it with folks and them get. I mean, I know we're exciting and interesting and all that kind of stuff, but too much of a good thing. Um,
We could talk about things for hours
we
and keep
could,
everybody glued to their
we could
screens, wouldn't we? Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Yeah.
so we'll be back on here at a future date. You and I'll figure out.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully more
Hopefully,
regularly. Yeah. The end of
yeah,
the
at least
school
once a
year got
month, get
crazy.
on here
Yeah.
and have a conversation. Again, we are on Spotify, so share our Facebook videos. Go to Spotify, check us out, like, follow, listen, share, and hope you have a great night. Brent, is there anything else you want to say tonight?
All good.
All
Yeah.
right. Well,
Thank
everybody
you.
have a good
Thanks,
evening.
Kurt.
Thanks.